As you breathe in, imagine all the reactions happening around you, all the ions and compounds that are bonding and breaking to balance electrons and charges.
Wasn't that relaxing? Isn't it amazing what we can do with phones these days, especially because they're powered by rechargeable batteries, otherwise known as galvanic cells, which implement chemical ideas into a physical concept. There are things called elements all around us, which are the basic building blocks to everything and can't be broken down into smaller substances. They are made up of positively charged protons, neutrons, and negatively charged electrons, and the number of each depends on its atom's placement in the periodic table. Most elements, besides stable noble gases, have room for more electrons because their valence shell isn't normally filled. These charges, or empty spots in the valence shell, cause certain attractions between atoms. When an atom loses electrons, it gains a positive charge, becoming something called a cation. Or when it gains electrons, it becomes something called an anion. When a cation and an anion love each other very much, they usually bond to create a new substance with a neutral charge, because both of their valence shells are filled.
Imagine that magnesium and iron trichloride are mixed to form magnesium trichloride and iron. We can split up the aqueous solutions because their ions can separate in water, multiply some common terms, and eliminate the chloride 1-. Don't worry, it's algebra, you can do that. Then we can split this new equation up further based on these new ions. The magnesium's charge has increased to 2+, while the iron's charge has decreased from 3+ to 0, which can be deduced from their position on the periodic table. These new equations are used in galvanic cells, along with their respective electrons, which balance the charges on either side. The solid magnesium has become something called the reducing agent because it will provide electrons to the subjects whose charge is being reduced, the iron, while the iron 3+ has become the oxidizing agent because it will accept electrons from the magnesium whose charge is being oxidized or increased.
Now let's add the physics and bring it all together.
These components come into play in galvanic cells and will make more sense, I promise. The oxidizing agent occurs at something called the cathode, while the reducing agent lies at the anode. The anode has a solid piece of magnesium in a solution that contains magnesium 2+. The reducing agent produces electrons that flow from the anode to the cathode, generating voltage. At the cathode, there's a solid piece of iron in a solution that contains iron 3+, that accepts these new electrons to create solid iron. The last piece is something called the salt bridge, which balances the remaining charges in the cell. For example, the anode creates the positively charged magnesium and therefore needs negative ions to balance the charge. It's vice versa for the cathode, because it collects electrons which are negatively charged.
In our phones, the same reaction takes place just with different elements.